In our headlines on this Friday afternoon, April 7th, here in South Korea. The country's current account looks to record yet another deficit in the month of February amid sluggish chip exports as Samsung Electronics' first quarter profits look to post a disturbing decline. On its final day of inspection of Busan's prospects for the 2030 World Expo, the delegation from the International Exposition Bureau said Korea's southern port city has all it takes to host a World Expo. Chinese President Xi Jinping and French President Emmanuel Macron on Thursday in Beijing agreed on the importance of peace in Ukraine while rejecting the potential use of nuclear weapons in warfare. We start on the local economic front. Korea's current account remains in the red for a second month in a row as semiconductor shipments overseas continue to shrink. Our Moon Hye-ryun reports.
South Korea's current account recorded a deficit for the second month in a row in February. Preliminary data released by the Bank of Korea on Friday shows that the country's account balance was in the red by $520 million. This is down more than $6.3 billion from the current account balance recorded at the same time last year. This follows a record high deficit the previous month. The goods balance suffered the greatest losses in February, falling by more than $5.6 billion on year to record a $1.3 billion deficit. It's the fifth consecutive month that South Korea's goods account has recorded a deficit. This was attributed to the sharp decline in exports, which dropped by $3.4 billion on year to $50.5 billion, a decline of more than 6%. The semiconductor and chemical goods sectors performed the most poorly. Exports of semiconductors fell by 41.5% compared to the same month last year, and chemical goods exports were down by 9.8% amid the economic slowdown. On the other hand, imports rose by $2.2 billion on year to nearly $52 billion. In particular, imports of raw materials such as gas and chemical industrial goods rose by over 7% compared to last year. For gas alone, imports rose by nearly 73% to over $6.1 billion. Meanwhile, the deficit in the service account, which includes earnings and spending on overseas trips and transport, came to over $2 billion in February. The travel balance deficit more than doubled on year, from $430 million to over $1 billion due to the easing of COVID-19 restrictions, prompting more Koreans to travel overseas. It remains to be seen whether this will improve with more inbound travelers from China, and the Bank of Korea remains optimistic that the goods balance will also improve amid hopes of an improvement in the semiconductor sector in the second half of the year. Moon Hye-ryun, Arirang News.
Well, despite those hopes, for now, first quarter profits for Samsung Electronics are projected to have plunged almost 96% on year. Our Lee Soo-jin has the latest.
Samsung Electronics is expected to post an earnings shock for the January to March period amid the continued sluggish global chip demand. The company disclosed on Friday an estimated consolidated operating profit for the first quarter of some 600 billion won, or around $455 million. That's a decline of nearly 96% from the previous year. Sales came to around 63 trillion won, around $48 billion for the same period, plunging almost 20% on year. This marks the first time in 14 years that the tech giant's operating profit fell below 1 trillion won. Analysts linked the sharp decline to plunging demand for semiconductors since the end of last year, resulting in lower prices in the chip market. They also expect the semiconductor division, which makes up 60 to 70% of Samsung's operating profit, to post a deficit of around 4 trillion won as its chip inventory continues to swell. Samsung responded to the ongoing sluggish demand for IT products by saying it will make adjustments to chip production. This is the first time the company has officially announced its intention to cut production, although exact details have not been revealed. The tech giant did say, however, that it will continue to increase investment in infrastructure as well as research and investment. 이수진, Arirang News.
Beyond Korea, the International Monetary Fund projects a period of lackluster economic growth for the world, averaging about 3% over the next 5 years. Now, this is its weakest projection since 1990. Our Jae-ok has more.
According to the International Monetary Fund's Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva, on Thursday, the UN's Financial Monitoring Agency expects the global economy to grow at the slowest pace since 1990.
We project global growth for the next 5 years to remain around 3%. This is our lowest medium-term growth forecast since 1990.
Calling it the IMF's lowest medium-term prediction since 1990, the IMF chief noted that the latest forecast is well below the average of 3.8% in the pre-COVID decade. She pinpointed several reasons for the slowdown, including higher interest rates by the world's top central banks, which drove up borrowing costs for households and businesses. She also said that 2022's slowdown was due to the aftershocks of the COVID-19 pandemic, while the Ukraine war will lead to further deceleration in 2023. Georgieva says that China and India would account for half of global growth in 2023, while 90% of advanced economies would see a decline in their growth for the year. At the same time, low-income countries would see per capita income growth staying below that of emerging economies due to higher borrowing costs and weakening demand for their exports. Despite high interest rates being one of the major reasons behind the global economic slowdown, she still urged central banks to stay the course in the fight against inflation as long as financial pressures remained limited. Georgieva's comments come ahead of a meeting between the IMF and the World Bank in Washington next week, with the global economy top of the agenda. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
In Busan, on the final day of their on-site assessment of Busan's prospects as a potential host to the 2030 World Expo, BI inspectors praised the efforts thus far, claiming that Busan has all it takes to host a World Expo. Our Song Yoo-jin was there.
The last day of the BIE's on-site inspection of Busan was another busy one. The delegation visited the world's one and only UN Memorial Cemetery in the morning and held a luncheon with young people in South Korea. In the afternoon, they took the time to speak to reporters about their 6-day visit.
We looked at the project from a financial point of view, logistical point of view, if the project has the necessary political support, if it has the support by the commercial entities, if it has the support from citizens. Busan has everything that it takes to host a World Expo.
What impressed them the most was the heartfelt warmth of Busan.
The welcome that was given to us by the citizens of Busan showed really the support for the project of Expo 2030.
Recognizing and offering to help tackle shared global challenges through the Busan Initiative and its 3 sub-themes were the strengths the BIE pointed out in the bid. The initiative is a core strategy of the city's candidacy that seeks cooperation with other countries to resolve the digital divide, climate change, public health, and food shortage crisis.
Expos are not just the 6-month events, but it's the whole process leading up to the event, and perhaps even more importantly, it's what we do with what we learned from this event afterwards, and what kind of partnerships and strategies we can build as a global community. So from that point of view, I think that the city of Busan, together with the Expo Bid Committee and the government of Korea, have a very good idea on how to push this forward. Themes need to evoke emotion. You know, they need to really draw something out of us so that we can, all of us, all the different countries around the world, come and present something truly useful at an Every Expo. And when you look at the theme of Busan, you have the idea of climate change.
After the press conference, the BIE enjoyed a farewell dinner, followed by a firework display at Gwanghwaلی Beach. The delegation will next write an assessment report and hand it to the BIE's executive committee for an review. Based on this and the remaining presentations of the 4 candidate cities, the final decision will be made in November. 송유진, Arirang News, Busan.
Up next, our finance correspondent Jae-ok covers the projected economic gains of Busan hosting the World Expo in 2030 for the country as a whole. Do take a look.
South Korea's government is all in to win the bid to host the World Expo in Busan. The economic impact it's expected to create is huge, 61 trillion won or around $46.4 billion US, with 500,000 jobs expected to be created. But this is not the first time that South Korea has hosted an expo. In 1993, there was a Daejeon Expo, which was science-themed, and in 2012, the Yeosu Expo, focusing on its theme of oceans. These 2 past events differ from a World Expo in that they were recognized expositions, also called specialized expos, where the host country has to pay for the construction of all the pavilions used by each participant country. These expos only run for 3 months. The World Expo that Busan is aiming to host is what's called a registered exposition, whereby each participant country has to cover the cost of the construction of their pavilion. This type of expo runs for 6 months. Large corporations are also kicking into gear in order to help Busan win. At the Entrepreneurs Committee for the World Expo 2030 Busan, 11 giant corporations including Samsung Electronics, Hyundai Motor, SK, and LG are doing all they can to make sure the bid is a success. Business leaders from these companies have been traveling across the globe to drum up more support while showcasing the latest technologies that South Korea has to offer, like the 6G network, robots, and metaverse during expo-related events. Startups are also hopeful of seeing the World Expo in Busan in 2030, as the event may help rebalance regional growth compared to the capital Seoul.
This is a chance for startup technologies to be showcased to the global market on our home ground. This could be a point where startups could seek for their expansion. There was a startup program at the Dubai Expo, so we're urging the Busan city government to operate the program this time as well.
Local industrial tech institutes and around 300 local companies are also showing their support for the bid by pledging to help with the event's technology infrastructure. Lee Dae-hyun, Arirang News.
On the local political front, the ruling People Power Party has elected 3-term lawmaker Yoon Jae-ok as its new floor leader. Representing a constituency in the conservative stronghold of Daegu City, Yoon beat 4-term lawmaker Kim Hak-yong for the post, gaining 65 out of the 109 votes cast by fellow ruling party lawmakers on this Friday. He is deemed a loyalist to President Yoon Suk-yeol and will be serving a 1-year term until next April, when the 2024 general elections will be held. The ruling party is seeking to secure a parliamentary majority next year at the National Assembly, which is currently held by the main opposition Democratic Party of Korea. In his acceptance speech, Yoon pledged to restore public confidence in the ruling party and to aid it to victory in the upcoming elections. Also, on this Friday here in capital Seoul, top nuclear delegates representing South Korea, the US and Japan reaffirmed their commitment to countering North Korea's military and nuclear ambitions. In a joint statement, Seoul's Kim Gon, Washington's Sung Kim and Tokyo's Takehiro Funakoshi condemned Pyongyang's flagrant violations of UN Security Council resolutions with its persistent missile launches. They also urge UN member states to refrain from providing work opportunities to North Korean laborers and to repatriate all paid North Korean laborers in their respective countries. The statement nonetheless left the door to dialogue with the reclusive regime wide open. Russia's war in Ukraine was the centerpiece of talks Thursday among the leaders of China, France and the European Commission in Beijing, during which peace was promoted and nuclear weapons rejected. My colleague Kim Do-yeon reports.
French President Emmanuel Macron and Chinese President Xi Jinping agree that the war in Ukraine should come to an end soon and nuclear weapons must be avoided at all times. This as the two met on Thursday in Beijing, with Macron arriving in the Chinese capital with a push for peace as one of his top agendas.
France shares the will to make sure that nuclear power is excluded from this conflict. International treaties should be respected. In no way can nuclear weapons be deployed outside of endowed states, especially in Europe.
We urge all parties to fulfill the solemn promise that nuclear weapons will not be used and nuclear war will not be fought. Oppose the use of biological and chemical weapons under any circumstances. Oppose the armed attack on civilian nuclear facilities such as nuclear power plants. Restart peace talks as soon as possible.
Macron also urged Xi to play a bigger role in mediating between Ukraine and Russia, saying he could count on Xi to bring back Russia to reason and get everyone to the negotiating table. Also during the day, EU Commissioner Ursula von der Leyen joined the two to form a trilateral meeting. There, she also reiterated China's willingness to play a part in forming peace between Ukraine and Russia.
I know from my phone calls that and President Zelensky asked for it publicly. So it was interesting to hear that President Xi reiterated his willingness to speak when conditions and time are right. I think this is a positive element.
Trade was also a major topic, with the EU claiming that European companies are not operating on a level playing field in China. Von der Leyen said decoupling from China is neither viable nor desirable from the perspective of maintaining good relations between China and the EU. Macron also made efforts to expand ties. Traveling with him to China were 50 French business leaders, including those from airplane producer Airbus and French luxury brand LVMH. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Back on the local front, the country's COVID-19 vaccination program for the winter season ends on this Friday. Now, this means the number of medical facilities where vaccines are available nationwide will be reduced from the current 17,000 to around 5,000. Those who wish to get the vaccine, however, can still get it for free at designated medical institutions. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization on Thursday reiterated its outlook that the emergency status for COVID-19 may be lifted this year, but did not share a specific date. A related meeting is scheduled for May. Researchers here in Korea reaffirming the health benefits of edible insects as great sources of dietary protein that is fundamental to overall muscle strength, especially for the elderly. Our Ian-jin explains.
When we see elderly people spending their free time doing a variety of exercises, we admire their physical activeness and fitness. But for them, there may be some sadness that their bodies aren't the same as they used to be.
There was a time when I used to jump around, but now I walk like an old man.
The process of muscle weakening as a part of aging is called sarcopenia. But it has become a global trend to consider muscle atrophy as more of a disease than just a sign of aging. And diseases call for treatment. While there isn't a treatment for sarcopenia, local researchers have found that mealworm extract enhances muscle differentiation and alleviates muscle loss. Mealworm extract was applied to the muscle cells of laboratory mice. Compared to muscle cells that were not treated, results showed an enhancement of 60% in myogenin, a protein that is expressed early in skeletal muscle differentiation. The experiment also showed changes in the number of genes that influence muscle atrophy, collectively referred to as atrogenes. The muscle cells treated with mealworm extract showed a decrease of these proteins by 36%.
The scientific proof that these mealworms help alleviate muscle atrophy is significant because it allows the expansion of the use of edible insects as a medicinal additive.
The latest research finding was also published in the International Journal of Scientific Studies, Life. And the Rural Development Administration plans to further its findings by expanding clinical research into the use of edible insects. Once looked at with disgust, more edible insects backed by scientific findings are becoming recognized as health supplements. Ian-jin, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. We begin in Israel, where 6 rockets have landed after being launched from Lebanon. According to the Israeli military, a total of 34 rockets were launched on Thursday local time, of which 25 were intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome anti-missile system. One person has been injured and no deaths were reported. No one has claimed responsibility for the launches, but the Israeli military believe they were conducted by Islamist militant group Hamas. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has responded to the rocket firings, promising to hit back at every act of aggression from Israel's enemies. The attack follows raids by Israeli police at the al-Aqsa mosque compound in Jerusalem on Wednesday evening. Known to Jews as Temple Mount, it's a holy site for both Judaism and Islam and has long been a flashpoint for tensions in the region. Taking a look at Tesla now, a special report from Reuters says that private videos and images captured by cameras on customers' cars were shared among Tesla's employees. Footage showing embarrassing and sensitive situations was reportedly shared through internal messaging systems between 2019 and 2022. These include road rage incidents and crashes into children. The revelations come after Reuters conducted interviews with 9 ex-employees who were involved in developing Tesla's self-driving system. Tesla and owner Elon Musk have not commented on the allegations of breaches of customer privacy. But Tesla's customer privacy notice says that its camera recordings are anonymous and are not linked to customer vehicles. Known for its wide variety of vending machines, which sell everything from edible insects to bread, bear meat is now also available in Japan. A vending machine in the remote town of Senboku in the north of the country is stocked with locally sourced bear meat. The meat is supplied by hunters during hunting season, when they are allowed to kill a specified number of bears as a form of population control. And the vending machine is getting some interest, with 7 to 10 250-gram packs sold per week at a cost of 2,200 Japanese yen or around $17. But not all are pleased. Animal rights activists have condemned the vending machine and called for the hunting of bears for their meat to be stopped. And finally, visitors flocked to New York City's Botanical Garden on Tuesday and Wednesday local time to catch the rare corpse flower blossom. It gets its name from the rotting meat-like stench that the flower emits. But the odor is by design, as it's meant to attract pollinators that feed on dead animals. Officially called the Amorphophilus titanum, the flower blooms for only 24 to 36 hours and doesn't have a set blooming cycle. The last time this flower bloomed was in 2019. Prior to that, it had not bloomed in 77 years. The flower is found in the rainforests of the Indonesian island of Sumatra. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Just when we thought we could breathe in good air after rain, now we are covered with a very much unwelcome guest. Smog and yellow dust that blanketed much of Korea. Especially those in western parts of the country have hit hard with ultra-fine dust alerts issued. Now, air quality should improve a bit as the day goes on, but be sure to check the level if you are planning on going outside and have a face mask on. Now, despite the poor air quality, it will be chillier than normal and looks to be even colder on Saturday morning. Highs are going up higher this afternoon under sunny skies. But the bright skies are covered with yellow dust all day, except in Gyeongsang, Namdo province and surrounding regions. Afternoon highs are 3 to 5 degrees higher than yesterday afternoon. Staying below norms through Sunday morning before returning to norms in the afternoon. It's going to be quite windy all day on the East Coast and Jeju on Saturday. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
And that ends our Friday afternoon newscast. We have Issues and Insiders coming up right after this break, so do stay with us.